Landmine live. If you watched my little test stream earlier, I've decided to come back and start doing the get me all set back up with all the equipment and the cameras and the switcher and the audio, the podcast unit I use for recording. I want to just real quick go to my Facebook feed so I can monitor the stream. We're going to talk about some of the election results that are ballots. There we are. Sorry about this. I'm back doing this and I haven't done this for a while, so I want to make sure that we're this is working. Can you guys hear me? If you're watching, text me or let me know. It looks like it's wait a second, did I not? Sorry about this. It is working. Okay, it is working. Perfect. Okay, so I want to go over some of the results of the, sorry about that, guys. I'm getting set back up here with the Landmine live, so it's Friday night and I want to make sure things work good. I want to talk about some of the election results that are still pending. There's a bunch of ballots left to be counted, which is very frustrating. I want to thank for all the folks that watched our live Election Central coverage on Tuesday night, our panel, our team. We had a great time. But unfortunately, there are still a lot of ballots left to be counted. Upwards of 50 or 60,000, maybe more, early votes and absentee votes. I'm going to go into a little bit about why that is, and it's very frustrating. The next count's not going to be until Tuesday. They're calling it the 7 days after the election. What I'm going to do first is bring up kind of just to give you guys an idea of where we are. Let's try this and try this. Look at that. Boom. So this is Landmine Twitter. I crunched the numbers. And so what's going on is a lot of people early vote this year, 73,000. A lot of people are absentee voting. And there was 81,000 absentee ballots requested, right? 81,000 people requested absentee ballots. This is as of a couple days ago. This was yesterday. 55,200 and something had been returned, right? So 81,000 requested, 55,000 returned, and 31,000, a little over 31,000 as of yesterday had been incorporated or counted in the mix. So what does this mean? Okay, absentee ballots in Alaska can arrive up to 2 weeks after the election. Other states, like I think Florida and Georgia, they have to have the ballot by the election day, it's got to be received by then. So we have at least 24,000 absentee ballots outstanding that they have that have yet to be incorporated into the results. So, I mean, that's statewide, but, they change per district, whether it's a House district or a Senate district. There's also ballot measure 2, which is very, very, very close. It's about 4,000 votes. And it's yes is passing by about 4,000 votes. So there's at least 24,000 absentee ballots left to be, but there's going to be more because more people are going to be mailing them in. And then we have 73,100 early votes, but only 51,264 have been counted because Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, the 4 days before the election, they don't count those votes, I guess because they want to make sure that somebody doesn't early vote and then go vote on election day. For me, the cure for that would be if you early vote and you go vote on election day, whether it's fraudulently or whether it's accidentally, maybe you forgot you voted, I don't know. If that happens, you just count the first vote. And plus, I believe they mark it. Like if you already early voted on election day when you go to vote, it should be marked in the booklet. Anyways, so there's still 21,800 early votes left to be counted, 24,000 absentee ballots at least, probably more. And then question ballots, we're not sure how many of those there are. I'm thinking 60,000. Some people are thinking 70 or 80,000. We don't know because the division hasn't told us yet. At least I haven't found any information about how many ballots they have in their possession that they haven't counted yet. So when we go over here to the election report, we're seeing 42%, 257,000. That number is probably going to be closer to 320 or 30,000. So it's a lot of ballots left to be counted on Tuesday, and then there's going to be another count, before they certify the election, and then November 20th is when they're going to do the tabulation, the ranked choice tabulation for the races where somebody doesn't have 50% plus one. They're going to do a retabulation on November 20th, which is 12 days away. So just to go through this, I mean, this hasn't changed much. Trump obviously way up. There's still a few precincts out there. We have 401 of 403 reporting. This is going to go, unless the early votes and the absentee ballots that are outstanding can get Nick Begich, over the top to 50% plus one, it's going to go to the ranking, and you're going to have this Hafner guy first, and then this John Wayne Howe guy second. His votes get retabulated. He could very well win outright, Begich, but I think probably when all these early and absentee votes get counted, he's probably going to be below the 50% mark, so we're going to see a ranked choice tabulation. Jesse Keel, he was unopposed. He won. Bjorkman, there's still votes, again, to be counted, but he's well ahead of Ben Carpenter, 1,000 votes. So very, very, unlikely. I mean, Bjorkman's going to win that race. Kaufman here is sitting right below 50%. So depending on the absentees and the early votes, how those go, he might have to go to the ranking, but he's way ahead of Park. So the Republican Borbridge, his votes are going to either mostly go to Kaufman or be bullet voted. Clayman is, obviously well above Vasquez. Dunbar, no problem. Gecker and Merrick, Gurker, I guess. A lot of people thought Gurker was going to win. I did too. I was wrong about that. Merrick well ahead. This is one of the interesting ones that I predicted based on the primary results. Rob Yunt, Senator-elect from the Valley, he's at 53.5% over David Wilson, who was part of the current majority with the Democrats, and that was one of the things he was attacked over. In the primary, Wilson and Yunt and Wright got over almost 60% of the vote, and Wilson only got about 40% of the vote, and Yunt didn't really campaign in the primary. So this is kind of a flip seat. And later I'm going to talk about the organization in the House and the Senate, and kind of they've already made announcements, both majorities. Both are going to be coalition majorities, but that's a pickup basically for the Republicans. This race is extremely close. We're 74 votes difference with Scott Kawasaki and Leslie Hadukovich, Republican. While Leslie winning would be a pickup for Republicans, I happen to think that she probably would join the majority, and I'll talk about why later, but right now, if the current minority makeup, from what I think it's going to be, there's nobody in the majority unless Kawasaki wins, from Fairbanks or the Matsu Valley. So if she wins, I'd have a hard time believing she wouldn't want to be in the majority to give Fairbanks a say in kind of what happens. But this is a very close race. Both sides are looking at the numbers, how many absentee votes are outstanding, how many early votes are outstanding, how are they going to go, what percentage do they have to get to win, and I think I predicted Hadukovich was going to win. I think right now Kawasaki probably has a very slight edge based on kind of how the earlies and absentees are, I think, going to go, but it's so close, it's hard to tell. That's a very close race. Mike Cronk, many progressives thought Fletcher I didn't think she had a shot. I predicted he was going to win, and it looks very clear that he's going to win outright. This is the Click Bishop seat, also kind of a pickup for Republicans. Bishop's a Republican, but he's in the current Senate bipartisan majority. Cronk, very unlikely. Maybe it's possible, but I think very unlikely at this point he'll join the majority. And then Donnie Olson's unopposed. So maybe I'll just go back and talk about the Senate before I get to the House. I just did the Alaska Political Report. If you don't subscribe, you should get a hold of me and think about subscribing to the Alaska Political Report for all the news about Juneau, the legislature, the budget, the lobbyists, everything. I just wrote about the Senate announced a couple days ago, very quickly, their majority, their current, keeping their bipartisan coalition majority with Gary Stevens as Senate President, Bill Wielechowski as the Rules Chair, and Kathy Giesel as the Majority Leader. Now, one interesting development was James Kaufman, who's currently in the Senate majority. He kind of didn't do very well in the primary. I think he was concerned about that. Some people may have been helping Janice Park, his Democratic opponent, not openly, but maybe covertly. Anyways, it sounds like Kaufman was unhappy with what he was going to be offered. It sounds like maybe it was a dispute over the Finance Committee. He hasn't said this explicitly, but it seems like from people I've talked to and kind of sourcing, it seems Kaufman's not going to be back in the majority. So if Kaufman's in the minority with Mike Cronk, with Shelley Hughes, with Mike Schauer, with Rob Myers, and I'm leaving someone out, Mike Cronk, Rob Yunt, Mike Schauer, Shelley Hughes, Rob Myers, and who am I leaving out? I'm leaving someone out. There's 6 as I see it right now, and which is good for the Republicans because right now they have 3. They have Shelley Hughes, Mike Schauer, Rob Myers, and in the uniform rules, the legislature's uniform rules, you have to have at least 5 members in the minority to kind of be recognized, to have seats on committees. So if they have 6, if they do in fact have 6 per the little uniform rule chart of proportional seats on committees, they would get 2 members on the 7-member finance committee. They would have a minority leader. They would have 1 member on these 5. Most of these smaller committees are 5 members. So it would be an actual minority if they have at least 6. Now, I think some of the folks are waiting to see maybe Bjorkman potentially. I think he's probably in. I don't think there's any question. But if ranked choice voting is repealed, and right now the yes is winning by about 4,000 votes or less than 1%, a lot of votes left to be counted. But if that gets repealed, I think a lot of people are looking, even if it's a four-year seat for the senator, am I going to get primaried here in 4 years and not have any chance of winning if I'm part of a coalition? I think a few people might be considering that. So let me pull up the press release here. I have the press release for the, I actually can pull up, because I'm missing a name. Why am I missing a name? I knew it was 6. I had 6. Here we go. So pull this up here. Myers, Schauer, Hughes, so 6. Myers, Schauer, Hughes, Kaufman, Kronk, Yunt. If this holds, if they're minority if these 6 folks stay together and they're in the minority, that'll be the Senate minority, a real minority. I'm going to go back to this proportional chart here and kind of show you what I was talking about. So this is the uniform rules chart. If you have 6 members in the Senate minority here, the Finance Committee's 7 members, so they'd have 2. So that wouldn't actually change until they aren't going to get to 9. So basically, the difference is between 5 and 6. If they have 5 members, they only get 1 member on the Finance Committee. If they have 6 members, they get 2 members on the Finance Committee. So that is going to be some pressure they're going to put on, whether it's potentially Kaufman or maybe Kronk or somebody that might go to the majority. They're going to really be upset if they lose one, if they have 5 and not 6, because they're going to lose a seat on the Finance Committee. So let's go into the House races. We'll talk about that now. Very interesting. The House also put out an organizational announcement where Bryce Edgman's coming back as Speaker after he was Speaker from 17 to 21. Louise Stutes is Rules Chair, and Chuck Kopp, who beat Craig Johnson, as Majority Leader. Now, Kopp and Stutes were in former coalition majorities. Stutes was Speaker, Kopp was Majority or Rules Chair. Now the Senate announced kind of the whole deal. They announced their president, their finance co-chairs, they made Kelly Merrick the whip, L.V. Gray Jackson as legislative budget and audit. I mean, they announced all their people basically for the key leadership roles. The House only announced 3: Stutes, Edgman, Stutes, and Kopp. They haven't announced finance co-chairs. Now maybe it's because they're leaving some spots open if they want to entice some Republicans to come over, or more likely it's because they ended up, Ted Eichheid's winning over Stanley Wright. Kai Holland's going to beat Lucy Bauer. They maybe didn't think they were going to have 21. Right now they have 21, even if David Nelson loses to Cliff Groh. Cliff Groh's up just a few votes over David Nelson, and there's a lot of kind of early absentee votes to be counted. That's the military base. So even if Nelson wins, they still have 21. So they probably got together. They met in Anchorage on Wednesday, and they wanted to put something out there, raise the flag, and say, look, we have 21, we have a majority. If other folks want to come join us, some of the Republicans, fine. I think some of the Republicans were a little miffed that they weren't invited, or maybe they weren't included, or it just happened, and now they're kind of feeling like they're getting kind of scraps afterwards. But there is several positions they haven't, and there's also chairs of things like the Resources Committee, and there's other committee positions. There's the Legislative Council, which the House is going to chair that time. So there are some things left, but they only announced 3 positions in the House. So we'll go over here. We'll just look at some of these races. Now, Jeremy Bynum, I reported yesterday, he was actually at the organizational meeting for the coalition. And when I say coalition, it's basically mostly Democrats, a few independents, and 2 Republicans, Chuck Kopp and Louise Stutes. So it's the Senate one's a little more balanced as far as kind of Republican-Democrat. But Bynum was at the meeting, but I've since talked to him. He hasn't committed to joining them. But, I think kind of good on him for planting a flag and saying, I'm not ideological. I'm not going to just be with the Republicans because I'm a Republican. I'm open to, being in a coalition. And I think that gives him some power as far as his negotiations on either side. Himschutt's unopposed. Story's unopposed. Himschutt, independent from Sitka. Andy Story, Democrat, unopposed. Sarah Hannon, I'm really sad, is unopposed. She's not a fan of the Jews, so maybe next time somebody runs against her. Louise Stutes easily beat her Libertarian opponent, Sarah Vance. Some people thought this Brent Johnson guy from the Assembly had a really good shot. He's not doing horrible, but she's well up over him. And then this other Dawson Slaughter Republican here is almost 10%, so she'll win re-election. Ruffridge is no problem, Republican, to beat Gillum, who he beat in 2022. This one's kind of interesting. Bill Elam's ahead. He's on the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly. He's a retired. Hillier's a retired general, and Elam's been around for a long time in local politics. So in this case, it doesn't really matter who wins because they're both Republicans. So they're going to be with the Republicans unless something kind of goes awry with either of them. This was one that I thought Lucy Bauer should have won. It's a Republican district, but it's an open seat, and they both had a lot of money, and they both they both worked very hard, and Kai Holland's well up. I think this is one the coalition of the Democrats didn't think they were going to get. They were maybe surprised about. Chuck Kopp beat Craig Johnson. He's way up on Craig Johnson. Julie Colomb, Featherly ran a good campaign, raised a lot of money, but Julie's well liked, and she's going to prevail on that one. Schrage, well over, way ahead of Lertzma. Andy Josephson, this is my district, well ahead of Heather Gottschall, the Republican. Elise Galvin, way up, no problem. Mia Costello, this is not a surprise. I thought she was going to win outright. And poor Denny Wells, I mean, he almost beat Tom McKay 2 years ago. He came back. Tom McKay was in, then Tom McKay was running for the Senate. And then Dustin Darden got in with a few points, but kind of rough one for Denny Wells. He almost got it 2 years ago, and then Mia Costello came in, and she's very well known, very well liked. Carolyn Hall, way up over Nick Moe, who actually didn't withdraw properly. And then when the results came in on Tuesday, the first round of results, she was like losing by it was the first precinct or second precinct. We were all kind of like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But she's way up over Nick Moe. Fields unopposed, Democrat. This is the one I was talking about, the Cliff Grow. Now, if Nelson, look at this, we're talking about a few votes. I mean, it's like less than, it's like 0.5% difference. And very low turnout here in this district. It's the military base. So there's early votes and absentee ballots. Nelson could very well win this seat. I predicted that this could be, even though Cliff Grow did so well in the primary, it was such low turnout. It's the base. It's Trump. It's presidential year. So if Nelson pulls it off, the Republicans get another seat. They'll have 19 Republicans in their minority unless somebody flips. If Grow pulls it off, the coalition will have 22 as of now. Genevieve Mina, Democrat, easily winning re-election. Andrew Gray, Democrat, easily winning re-election. Same with Donna Mears, Democrat. Here's the other one that's very close, not as close as the Grow-Nelson race, but Stanley Wright is losing to Ted Eichscheid, who he beat by like 100 and some votes 2 years ago, and now Ted's up by 100 and some votes. But again, there's a lot of votes to be counted, and I'm just very frustrated that our system, and this is not a result of ranked choice voting. They've been doing this for many, many, many years in the count, where they wait a week, and it shouldn't be like this, because what's going to happen is some of these races are going to flip. There's going to be a whole bunch of new ballots counted on Tuesday, a week after the election. So I wish the ballots they had would be counted. I mean, Florida did this. They have 20-some million people, and they count their ballots. We should be able to do that with 700 and some thousand people. Jamie Allard, no problem. Dan Sadler unopposed. Delana Johnson unopposed. Kathy Tilton, all Republicans unopposed. This is an interesting one. I missed this. I thought Eastman was going to win. I suppose it's, depending on if he can really do super well with the absentees and early votes, it's possible. But with a couple hundred votes, I think it's safe to say he's not in a really good position at all to win re-election. And then this is the Jesse Sumner seat, where he didn't run for re-election, even though he got the most votes in the primary. He withdrew. And it's so closer between Menard and Moore. The question is, where do these 25 or 1,600 votes for Jessica Wright, how do they distribute? Do they go to Menard? Do they go to Moore? Do they not go to anybody? Do they bullet vote? So that's one of these ranked choice deals, which is going to happen on November 20th. George Rauscher unopposed. Again, doesn't matter. They're all Republicans. They're all going to be with the Republicans, either Moore or Menard. Rauscher unopposed. McCabe, well ahead of Doyle Holmes, Republicans. This was the one I thought, was going to be closer. I thought LeBon had a shot because of the Trump percentage in 2020 in that district and just how well known Bart LeBon is. But so is Maxine Dybert, is very well liked, and she's well ahead of Bart LeBon there. So that's a keep, basically, seat for the Democrats. Will Stapp, no problem over, I don't even know who this guy is, but Dameron, I call him, was it Dameron or Dameron? But Mike Prox, unopposed. This guy's always unopposed. And then you got Tomaszewski, well up over Joy Beth Cottle, so no big deal. Ashley Carrick, keeping her seat, Democrat. This is another ranked choice one. You got this Rebecca Schwenke and then Brandon Kowalski. I think what's going to happen here is when they do the ranking, these libertarian votes probably get mixed up, and then these Pam Good votes either go to Schwenke or nobody. So Rebecca should win. That's the Mike Cronk seat. She should win that race. And then Bryce Edgman, obviously very well ahead of his guy. This is one that McCormick's going to lose almost certainly. He's the incumbent, but this Nellie Jimmy is way ahead of him. So first, Victoria Sosa, that's C.J. McCormick's ex-girlfriend, actually, kind of small Alaska world stuff. Her votes are going to go first. They're probably not going to go to McCormick, ex-girlfriend. And then Keppel over here, this Veterans Party guy, his votes are going to redistribute. Unless McCormick gets like all of his votes or most of his votes, Nellie Jimmy should win this race. But this will be one of these ranked choice tabulation ones on November 20th. Neil Foster easily ahead of Tyler Ivanoff. And then Robin Burke was over 50%, but now she's below 50%. There's still one precinct left. This is the Thomas Baker seat. He's not going to win, but what's going to happen is his votes are going to redistribute. And unless, Simon Chase would basically have to get all of his vote. There's still some early votes and absentees, but she would have to get like all of his votes, which ain't going to happen. So Robin Burke's almost certainly going to win this seat in District 40. So the House is more interesting. The Senate's kind of, announced their majority. There's a couple of questions about maybe Kaufman and Cronk, but even then, the Senate has plenty of numbers for a majority, and they've announced their key positions, all their leadership positions, finance co-chairs, Bert Stedman, Lyman Hoffman, Donnie Olson, Gary Stevens, president, Kathy Giesel, majority leader, Bill Wielechowski, rules chair. So that's done. It's just a matter of if a few people are going to move or not to the majority or to the minority. The House, they've only announced 3 positions. They haven't announced finance co-chairs. There's a couple of races in flux. We talked about the Nelson race and the Eichscheid race. If Nelson and Stanley were to squeak out victories, the majority as it is now would collapse. It'd be 2020, which we've seen happen after the 2018 race elections and the 2020 elections, and it took a month to organize. So the House is much more in flux. I think some of the folks are waiting. Let's go back to the ranked choice. I wanted to show you guys the ranked choice here. Repealer. Number one's minimum wage and paid sick leave is way ahead. But look at how close this is. Like 4,000 votes, 50.8 to 49.16%. And if there's 60 or 70 or 80,000 votes left, depending on how they skew those early votes and those absentee votes, this could change. So I would not be surprised if no prevails. I would not be surprised if yes prevails. It's very close. So I think some people are watching